The spice must flow. Happy Halloween! Okay, so it's probably not going to come as any surprise to you that upon searching through my collection for projects I could make this October, the option of cute dress with incredibly gay subtext was really easy to sell me on. Let's dive straight in. I'll explain along the way. Wizard of Oz sewing patterns have been around since at least the 80s, but the vintage ones with the MGM logo are very hard to find. This pattern is from 2006, but I don't hugely mind. It's still licensed, so I'm confident the design of the dress hasn't changed significantly from the 1930s film version. I was clever and decided to do a small bust adjustment, so this fitted me a little better. This was a terrible idea on a pattern this complex, do not recommend, and got to cutting it out. Usually I don't pay too much attention to the provided cutting layouts and yardage, but this dress has so much cut on the bias, it was actually really helpful. I think this is the first pattern I've ever had which actually used the exact amount of yardage it claimed it would. First the darts got marked up using heat erasable pens, then the bias cut bands were sewn at the top and bottom of the gingham bodice section that's layered on top of the white false blouse. And we ran into our first problem, namely that I made a small bust adjustment to the main front piece and not the gingham front piece, and well, okay, basically everything from here on out is slightly fudged. Anyway, have you ever heard of a friend of Dorothy? For much of the 20th century, this was a slang term for queer people, particularly gay men among queer people. The exact origins are unknown, but assumption is that it refers to one or both early 20th century icons. Writer Dorothy Parker, who was a pretty interesting person in her own right, but I'm not really going to talk about, and Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. The bodice has decorative straps over each shoulder, also cut on the bias, and these get made up and attached just before the shoulder seams are sewn. I've made a pretty key error here, place your bets now on when I'll notice. The sleeves get gathered down along the bottom edge and attached to cuffs, and the top edge gathered and fitted into the arm side while the bodice is flat. As an aside, I hate setting sleeves this way. If I hadn't been trying to follow the actual instructions as closely as possible, I would have just sewn up the side seams first. The books and film of The Wizard and Oz are, well, pretty gay, probably unintentionally. Something something, changing meaning of words, something romantic friendships, something that princess who gets turned into a boy as a baby and then is turned back when she's an adult and they realise making her live as a boy was an evil plan all along. It doesn't actually count as a trans narrative. But like, there's subtext and then there's Judy Garland singing about a rainbow. Jokes aside, a lot of queer people strongly identified with the story and characters of The Wizard of Oz, and this led to gay men in particular referring to themselves as friends of Dorothy. If you were also gay, you'd probably know what that meant. If you weren't, you'd just assume Dorothy was some woman who might be a mutual acquaintance. Excuse me one sec, I have to have an existential crisis about this costume. So they want you to attach the skirt before you attach the collar. It's because of the zipper. You have to put the skirt in to have the zipper in, and then the collar goes on afterwards. Right, I understand. Okay, crisis averted. Making up the skirt was very simple. It was basically 3 big rectangles, but it has this interesting applied bias cut band. This is a neat trick for making up continuous bias binding too. Mark out the rhombus, offset the side seam by the width of the final strip, and then cut it up in a spiral. The pattern wanted me to just top stitch this on, but I decided I was going to hand sew it on instead because pretty and time consuming. One last Dorothy fact as I get on with that. Stop me if you've heard this one before. If you're thinking, why on earth would someone assume Dorothy was just some random mutual acquaintance, you might be interested to know that the US Navy did exactly that in the 80s. I'll leave a link to a video with more info and a bunch of sources in the description. It's a wild ride if you like homophobia. Okay, we're going back to sewing. With the skirt attached to the bodice, the zip could go in and the collar could be attached over the top. Then all I needed to do was tack down the ends of the, god damn it, small bust adjustment, not even once. So I guess I'm ripping out the shoulder seams and adjusting the straps to the right length before doing that. Finally, I'm going to add some buttons at the end of the straps. I don't have the right kind and these are kind of chunky, but they look okay. And that should be the dress just about done. Hello, welcome, welcome, come in, come in. Oh, don't worry about that, we're all friends of Dorothy. Excuse me? I don't know you. I don't know any of you. Please stop coming to my house. Never speak to me or my son ever again. Here it is, a final thing, and a really unconvincing wig. I don't have a brown one that doesn't have a fringe. So how'd I do? I don't like how many raw edges there are in this dress. I followed the instructions pretty closely because it was complex and I didn't want to mess it up, but I think I could have done a much neater job left to my own devices. Also that bloody small bust adjustment. These buttons don't really work, but they're also not as bad as I thought they were going to be. Also, there should be a rickrack trim on the cuffs and collar. I didn't have the right colours, so I skipped it. I slightly regret that now because it looks a little bit plain. But also I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this after Halloween because it's very very distinctive. I am really glad I got the pattern instead of just making it up though, because there's a lot of detail in this dress I didn't initially realise was there. The use of bias to create contrast in the gingham is really interesting and cool. I'm really happy with it in general, and I definitely think I'm going to borrow this idea of using checks going in different directions to create interest without being overwhelming. Overall, solid 8 out of 10. That's everything from me. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, do all the things that make the YouTube gods happy. And if you want to join the lovely people appearing on the screen right now, you'll find a link to my Ko-fi in the description box, where you can make a donation to help me afford actual glitter for my ruby slivers. Dream big, and I'll see you next time. Hello. Hey, good boy. Hey. Oh my god, if you suddenly decide you want to actually sit on my lap this time. Oh, who's a good boy? You don't want to do this, do you? Hello, sir. You're getting stolen. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're getting stolen. Oh. No wiggle. No wiggle.